Hello, everyone. So let's start off with talking about Israel out here. First of all, what I've really looked of note out here is that the hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah are really picking up, as we can see a lot of shelling and airstrikes and ATGM strikes going on between either of them, and broadly across, the border going on out here. So, this is something definitely to keep an eye on in the future, and definitely, as to what's going on. I didn't particularly expect for this to happen. I only really assumed that it would, be the few airstrikes and whatnot going on until the end of the conflict. But as we can see, I mean, it seems that Israel has definitely stepped up their offensive work. Again, telling Hezbollah that they really don't want to engage with Israel, or else they're going to you know uh, get struck out of the air from anywhere across all of pretty much anywhere they could operate. Also, more clashes going on in the West Bank and more missile strikes going on across Israel. And here, of course, in the Gaza Strip, we can see that. So, a couple changes over here. We can see that Israeli forces have pushed into what appears to be central Gaza out here, seemingly pushing outwards from the sea and also pushing inwards, from what I understand. That this was not previously held by Israel, but now it is this sort of inlet dock out here. And also they seem to have pushed further out as well in this area towards the Jabalia area, from what we can see. But other than that, there are definitely heavy clashes going on out here, and as we can also see, the Al Shifa hospital still being a very hotly contested area out here, and also completely encircling the Ashati refugee camp out here. But other than that, those were all really the only updates out here in Israel. So just a story here talking about the, Al Shifa hospital a situation out there. As we can see, patients, calling it the circle of death, due to, what's going on out there, being completely surrounded, by hostilities, being mostly surrounded by Israel and, partially Hamas. And so from what I really want to talk about here is mostly the fact that the way that both Hamas and Israel are both trying to portray this conflict, in the sense that Israel is taking out a terrible terrorist organization that hides behind children and the sick in hospitals, and meanwhile Hamas, of course, are trying to portray this as like um, a larger force, Israel, um, you know, beating down on the little guy, and not caring who gets in their way, whether it be hospitals or children or whatever. So what I want to talk about here is that Hamas is not, they are a terrorist organization, don't get me wrong, but they aren't just a terrorist organization. They are the government. They are what controls Gaza. They run the hospitals. They literally run the hospitals. So when people say, oh, they're hiding in the hospitals, well, yeah, of course they are, because they are the hospitals. So when it's a tough call when you're trying to take out the people who are apparently running the hospitals, while also keeping those who are in the hospital safe. It's definitely a tough balancing act for Israel to try, in terms of trying to balance, the way that they're not just fighting this war, but also the way it's being seen and presenting it to their allies abroad. Because as we know, Israel would not be faring so well if they didn't have the support of the United States out there. So it's something that I just wanted to point out, just in terms of you know this whole situation. And as of course, I've said before, the highest casualty in war are always civilians. So no matter what, trying to protect civilians, you can do your best, but it's not, it's you can do your best, you can try your best, you can try to protect as many civilians as you can, but as long as this is a war, especially of the 21st century, there are going to be civilians caught. Alright, so taking a look at some of the footage out here in Israel and Gaza. So this is the Shati refugee camp, the area that pretty much Israel has completely surrounded and encircled. And the one that I've talked about in the past, that not too much footage really comes out of here, albeit it is a very densely packed area and it is decently contested out here. So what I really wanted to show here, nothing happens. It's just what appears to be a mine clearing vehicle um, launching its ordnance out here, and yeah, that's all that happens. You see, there it is. So this is pretty much the only clip that I could at least find quickly out here of at least something of interest that wasn't pretty much just tanks rolling and Israeli soldiers marching pretty much in what it seems to be open desert, or just open desert, or mostly destroyed buildings that aren't that aren't in these densely packed areas. So I just wanted to show this really quick and talk about that. Even though we don't see too much combat out here that isn't Israeli airstrikes, there are still hostilities going on out here, as we can see. All right, now pivoting over to Ukraine here really quick, we got one really big update as we can see. So we can see Russians have advanced a decent amount out here from Yahidna. So we can just take a quick glance to see how much they have, advanced out here. So it appears to be around 2 kilometers, which is pretty big, especially in terms of how this war has been fought and how it's been going recently. So it's if Russians can keep up this assault and this movement, they'll definitely have a bigger gains than what they've been achieving lately. And it's interesting how we haven't seen anything in the Avdiivka direction as of today, although I expect that to change sometime soon. But also one last change over here. It's pretty minor. We can just see that the front line seems to have just adjusted slightly. But just in terms of Russians seemingly trying to consolidate their area around Bakhmut, which is, interesting considering how Ukraine pushed pretty hard during their counteroffensive to, as we can see here, take back some area in this direction, but the Russians seemingly pushing back a bit. So just in terms of what's going to happen in these next few days, I'm going to assume that this is probably going to be a bit more hotly contested in the future, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now, a quick glance at the combats going on out here. Of course, shelling all across the entire front line, and 50 combat engagements, which is a bit around what we're expecting out here. And interestingly enough, something that was kind of brought to my attention are the assaults that are going on in the Kharkiv sort of Luhansk area up here. So it's something that I kind of want to talk about really quick, is that we see, it's just seeing some of the assaults going on out here, and yet we don't see any gains by Russians, which I assume the only reason why that is mostly because this area has been dug in and hasn't moved for like a year, so it's going to be really really hard for Russian forces to push anywhere that is so heavily dug in, which, as we know, is why Ukraine had a really hard time trying to push down here in the south in the Zaporizhia direction, considering the Russians were dug in for a good while. So, just in general, just talking about, of course, this war and how it's being fought. Frontal assaults on heavily fortified areas, on areas that where the enemy is completely entrenched and dug in, of course, is going to be hard. And considering, just the equipment on either side, and how Ukraine relies so heavily on Western equipment and just being supplied, and so does Russia to some degree as well. Um, it's just interesting to see how it's just progressing. Now, taking a quick glance at Oryx out here, we can see that before they were reporting around 4,721 in terms of Ukrainian equipment losses. Now we're looking at 4,736, and before, in terms of Russia, they're reporting 13,077, now 13,105, which is about in line of what we're expecting in terms of Russian frontal assaults and just general equipment losses across what's been happening lately and the updates that we've been seeing. So this seems to be about in line of what we're expecting. All right, so a quick clip here that I wanted to show. So this is allegedly a Russian soldier running across a field, and he is, just also want to side note, looking at this field, just pockmarked with artillery shells and whatnot. So he is surrendering to Ukrainian forces, and what I mostly wanted to talk about here is that, of course, it's a propagandic win for Ukraine, and every time they accept a such uh, surrenders like this, they're going to show it. So what I really wanted to talk about here was, also that Ukraine and a lot of, Western media sources are always saying that, Russia is on the brink of collapse, that the command structure is, falling apart by the day, and yet, this war is still going on. They're saying that Russia was about to collapse, until a year ago, and, of course, the only thing that really that seemingly amounted to was the Wagner putsch, I guess, and even then, what happened? Prigozhin's gone, and Wagner is pretty much completely out of the picture, save for some operations in Africa and maybe them coming back. But other than that, Wagner's gone. So just in general, I think that Putin has a pretty tight grip on his command, at least for right now. And just, of course, the longer this war goes on, the least popular is going to be considering more Russians who are going to perish in this conflict. So, just in general, what I want to talk about is that, of course, we're going to see surrenders um, by Russian forces, and we're probably going to see some surrenders by Ukrainians as well. But just in general, uh, I wouldn't don't believe when people say that one command structure or one country or even a leader is about to die, either sick, they're about to something is about to happen to them. Most of that is usually propaganda or just fake news, I guess you could call it. But you know, just in general, although this right here does appear to be a real clip, and it does happen, but it's definitely not as much as some media sources will try to claim. So taking a quick glance, of course, Myanmar out here. I only wanted to show a couple stills from this footage, but these are anti-junta forces, and as we can see, the equipment they seem to be sporting is very, very heavy, and they seem to be pretty decently equipped out here. So I can only assume that most of this equipment has been either captured, of course, because of a lot of the successes that they've been having out there in terms of the army bases that they've been seizing, and just other equipment that has been captured or abandoned by the Myanmar forces. So I also just wanted to show, a few seconds here that, even though these guys are clad in, flip-flop sandals out here, these guys are packing some pretty heavy equipment, right here. So just in general, even though it seems to be a conflict that is far off, and it doesn't seem to touch, people, of either Western world or wherever you may be, this conflict is going to have its resounding effects, not just in the area, but the fact that seemingly China has taken such an interest in it, considering they're neighbors. How that will turn out for them, and how it may turn out for other allied countries in the area. We'll just have to see. But just in general, of course, anti-junta forces seem to be gaining some successes out here in Myanmar. Well, that was mostly it that I really wanted to talk about for today. If there are any other conflicts that I should probably keep a better eye on, or anything else that is developing that I haven't really noticed, of course, because I want to talk about pretty much all the pressing conflicts that are going on. But yeah, if there are anything of note or of that caliber, just let me know in the comments below. And of course, other than that, thanks for watching.